Well, welcome back. Hopefully everyone can hear me this time. If you cannot hear me, by all means, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You'll be able to say anything.
We're not doing this again.
So somebody there, if I was you, I would probably just repeat the phrase that if you can't hear me as the central host of the show, then go ahead and comment on the appropriate tab. Until then, I'm just going to start talking and get this thing going. So this is the inaugural second
We're
inaugural
not doing
run
this again.
of
Third.
yeah. This is our third podcast, and we're doing
Good.
pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty
So
good.
I was pretty excited about that, and the only downside to this is that now I can see everything on the podcast, but it's has a little bit of a delay, so I have to listen to myself talk if I want to
You
actually
know how
use it.
painful it is for the rest of us now.
Exactly. All right, so let's officially start the podcast. I started it the stream. Everybody should be able to hear me. So welcome to technically our third podcast. The first one, okay. Second one, monumental failure. Third one, probably going to be pretty good.
Easily
I
the best
don't.
we've ever done.
Yeah, it's 99.9% foolproof. Um, so this is the first podcast that we have featuring Jordan, Seth Roach. He is our newest. We have 25% more members now than we did before. So Jordan, go ahead and say hi to everyone. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you to all the guys for inviting me onto the podcast. I really enjoy that. A little bit about me. 23 years old. I met everybody pretty much from Best Buy. I love comic books. That's about it.
You forgot that you got engaged today.
And again, I did. It was just a gift, just the promise ring. I mean, that pretty much means that I'm married. Well, yeah, I'm pretty much.
Yeah,
No, no. The
that's
ring that's on
permanent.
my finger means that I'm married.
That
Yours
doesn't
means
come
that you
off.
can run away at any time that you'd like to.
True.
I believe the last person to get rid of these rings had to throw it into an active volcano.
Yes, exactly.
It did end an age of darkness and tyranny, though, so that was also
Yeah.
a benefit.
Solid. Every single way, it's solid. Anywho, the first thing I want to cover is the fact that this is the first podcast, technically the third podcast that we have. Or second podcast that we have.
This is our fourth podcast.
Okay. This is our first podcast that is sponsored. So we are actually sponsored this week by the Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming in Morgantown Mall. It is ran by the very lovely and talented Ron Davis. He has the voice of an angel, and Mr. Dane Lumen is his general manager. So if you guys need any kind of comic books, trade paperbacks, variant covers, any subscriptions you want to get in your pull lists, go to the Four Horsemen. They'll take care of you. If you're into Magic, The Gathering, any tabletop games, pretty much any card games, they play all of them there. They have them year round. They have tournaments, pretty big stuff. They even have a gaming lounge now if you're into computer games, which is, I believe, where we're doing the podcast from right now, where 3/4 of the group is doing the podcast from.
Some of us weren't committed enough to show up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the rest of us, we all did.
Cool. So later on, Four Horsemen was gracious enough to actually donate a couple different variant covers for the Mighty Avengers, and I believe, what was the other one, Garrick?
Thor, God of Thunder, the number 13 Hemsworth variant for
Yes.
all the ladies, I believe.
That is I believe that's
Isn't he?
that's the Vidal Sassoon variant cover, right? Yeah.
Definitely.
That was a hair care joke for those of you who didn't get it.
Oh, hair, yeah.
I get hair. I get hair.
I'm not gonna laugh at that.
Well,
I'll give it a pity laugh. Ha!
I respect your determination, Chris. So we're going to be giving away a couple different variants. We'll talk about that a little at the end of the show. So yes, you do actually have to listen to the entire show to find out how to win free stuff. Or if you don't feel like doing that, you can just, watch it on YouTube at a later time and skip straight to the end, and you can still maybe win some stuff. Whatever you feel like doing. I won't control your life.
And let's keep in mind that the more people that show up to our podcast, the better the giveaways will get. So
Yeah.
This is us bribing you to tell your friends.
Yeah. And bribery pretty much works in every
It's 100% of the
conceivable way.
time.
Yeah, 100% of the time. I can't think of a time when it wouldn't work.
Batman doesn't take bribes.
Batman
He's the
Batman
exception to the
has
rule.
Batman has one rule: no killing and
No bribes.
bribery. Bribery. uh, so you guys want to go ahead and start talking about some comics?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So assuming that everyone can still hear me, pending the Garrett Gilmore fiasco of 2013,
It was a disaster.
we're going to start talking about a couple comics. And I will go first, and I will try to do a little bit better of a job that I did back when I was silent and no one could hear me. So we each brought 3 different books to the table this week, and we're going to discuss what we like about it. I'm going to go through and kind of start it off here. If you guys want to talk about anything having to do with the books, like let's say it's something that you guys read, by all means, post in the comment section. Feel free to give it a shout out, let us know. I can't see it, but these guys can certainly comment on anything that you guys are posting. So keep that in mind. First book I'm going to talk about is Batman, the New 52. Who here's reading Batman?
I'm reading Batman.
All right.
I'm familiar with who he is.
As am I.
He is the knight. He's the knight. So New 52 relaunched Batman when they relaunched their whole universe, and since then, I won't get too far into everything, but the current arc that they're in right now is called 0 Year, and it is a reimagining of the origin of Bruce Wayne and how he becomes Batman. So Batman's currently written by Scott Snyder, one of my favorite writers. He also wrote the first 18 issues of Swamp Thing. He's currently writing The Wake, and he also writes American Vampire, which are all really solid titles. If you guys want to check out any of those, they're all really, really good. He's definitely my favorite writer in comic books right now. But if you have one, in my opinion, if you have a chance to read any book that New 52 has produced, read Batman. It's really good. The 0 Year arc has to do with the Batman came back from his trials in the mountains, and he basically is learning to be Batman, and he's really cool. Scott Snyder does a good job of writing a young, more arrogant, brash kind of Bruce Wayne who he's not really Batman yet. He's more of kind of like the whole Batman Begins, like he's a symbol kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The cops don't really trust him. It's
And
cool.
one thing I'd like to add is when I first heard about 0 Year, I was a little upset. I was just in my room rolling my eyes like, are you kidding me? Another Batman origin? Like it's the last thing we need, but it's actually really, really good. So
I'll concede that I haven't read it yet, so my opinion's a little less relevant. But still, I still question the New 52 once again retelling Batman's origin story, which it's been told a couple of times. We're all familiar.
Yeah.
It's interesting for new readers, but I think as a result of the 37 movies he's been in over the last 15 years, most of us are pretty familiar with his origin.
And fortunately with it,
I do like
Batman.
Scott Snyder.
Fortunately, Scott Snyder's kind of he's steering away from a lot of the campier portions of the retelling of Batman's origin. He's kind of crafting a really good story around it. There's 2 story arcs. The first one just ended. It basically had to do with Red Hood 1 attempting to assassinate Bruce Wayne as he comes back and reveals to the world that he's still alive. And at the end of that story arc, spoiler alert, Red Hood 1 ends up being thrown into a vat of chemicals and probably eventually will be turned into the Joker. We don't know 100% that's what's going to happen, but if anybody who's ever read, the older origin stories of the Joker, that's pretty much what happened. So hopefully that's what's going on.
I guess that would be my question for you guys who are reading it. Do you feel like this adds anything to the DC universe that hasn't already been I mean,
I think
even
it's
that is a
I,
portion of the story that's already been
I
told,
think it's
even
a
if it's
really good
well
way
executed.
for I think it's a really good way for people who haven't got a chance to read the old Miller stuff and Batman or any of the older issues in the 80s, because let's face it, comic books are selling better now than they have been in a very, very, very long time. Yet it's really overwhelming. I talk to a lot of people about comic books all the time that don't really understand the allure of it, but they kind of want to get into it. And one of the biggest things is they don't want to go back and read tremendous amounts of stuff. And I think it's a great way to introduce um, new customer readers into this universe and say, hey, this is how the Joe got to start, or this is how this person, who you've seen in movies and television shows got started. And it's a really cool way for them to just get introduced to those concepts. Um, Anybody else? You guys have any thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, for longtime Batman readers or comic book followers, it's going to be a little tedious because you know that he's already Batman and you want to see him be Batman and kick some butt. But for newer readers, it's actually really refreshing. Um, and even for me, as a longtime Batman reader, it's an interesting retelling for sure.
Agreed. So the next arc that they're in right now, and this is how I'll wrap this up, because I don't want to take too much time on Batman. But they just started the second arc, which is I believe called Dark City, and they've reintroduced the character of Doctor Death, who's hasn't been seen in a very very long time. But it's really cool. He's like this skeleton, creepy figure who wears a robe. He's like a creepy Uncle Jedi, but he's cool. He injects people with a serum that causes their bones to like grow all twisted and weird. It's really when you pair the writing of Scott Snyder with the intense artwork of Greg Capullo, you get a really stellar book. And Greg Capullo, for anybody that knows me, knows that is my favorite artist. He's hands down the best. He's my biggest influence. I used to read Spawn, from the time that I was like 10 until I still have all the issues in a long box in my bedroom, and I'll break them out every now and then and just rifle back through them because I just think his work is amazing. So that's my first book, uh, Batman. Anybody who gets a chance to talk or gets a chance to pick up Batman, pick it up. It's even if you have to go back and pick up the trade paperbacks, it's worth it. It's a really really good book. Um, Next title I'll bring up is Chris Bird's favorite superhero. That is the Superior Spider-Man.
A version of my favorite superhero.
I have a lot of
Yeah,
issues with this book, but I can bring those up later.
Yeah,
that's
we'll
that's
bring
fine.
it up
We'll get
in a
to it.
minute. Let Nick introduce, and then we'll
That's
bring up some
fine.
stuff.
I'm just saying I have some issues. I'm warning everyone now.
I'm totally comfortable with your issues. So I'm really digging the Superior Spider-Man, and I'll tell you why. Um, I got burnt out on Spider-Man a long time ago because it just kind of felt to me like they were redoing the same shit. And the premise of Superior Spider-Man is that Dr. Octopus traps his consciousness inside of Peter Parker's body, and at the end of the Amazing Spider-Man, so Dr. Octopus learns how to he gains all of Peter Parker's memories and feelings, and he decides that rather than taking Peter Parker's body and going on and carrying on his criminal ways, he's going to be a better Spider-Man than Spider-Man ever could be. He's going to be a superior Spider-Man. And it is a really interesting look at a character who we've all grown up with and we know is predisposed to do one thing. It's kind of like seeing it's like wearing your father's clothes when you're a child, in my opinion. Um, it's interesting to see what someone else would do with the powers of another character. So Garrett, go ahead and tell us what your issues are, because I know you got some.
Well, my first issue is, spoiler alert, I was loving this. Like, it was literally the best thing that ever happened to Spider-Man ever. Well, not the best
Whoa,
thing.
yeah.
Not the best thing. I'm over exaggerating, but it was
No
a
You,
lot of
bold
if
fun.
you've
statement.
only read this book, then it's
If
the
you've
best thing
never
that's ever
seen
happened to
anything
Spider-Man.
ever, but okay, I'm overreacting. It was fun, and I liked it a
Mhm.
lot. And then, spoiler alert, when Peter got destroyed, like, I was just so heartbroken that it just made me mad and I couldn't read it anymore. I thought Iron Man was going to come in and save the day, so I canceled it. But if he's back now and I look like an idiot right now, then I should probably renew it. But if
Well,
it's still just
Peter
Doc
Peter
Ock.
isn't Peter isn't back, but I feel like it would be a cop out for readers who are reading the series to have him come back in the first couple, months of the book being out, because you want to give, the character of Otto Octavius a chance to really walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And if you just kind of go through and you have Peter Parker in the background the whole time kind of being a little bird on his shoulder, then he can never really truly get the opportunity to do that. The current arc that they're in right now is if I had a flow chart to describe it, I would use it. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the Spider-Man world, and
A
one of the things that's going on right now is that there's a guy named the Goblin King in the background who's kind of pulling all the threads towards uh, essentially taking down Spider-Man again, and he doesn't really, of course, there's no way for him to know that this new superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius living Peter Parker's life. Um, they're doing an arc right now called Darkest Hour, which is the band I went and saw in DC last night. That is weird, but
Crazy.
That video
but
you
they're
posted was so intense.
yeah, they're pretty metal. But they're doing an arc right now where Superior Spider-Man has his first run-in with Venom, and he becomes the Superior Venom now. And I'm digging it. It's one of the titles I look forward to every month. I actually am really super interested to know what Chris Bird thinks about it, because for those of you who don't know, Spider-Man is Chris Bird's favorite comic book character.
So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this book. If I were to judge it solely on, I mean, on its writing, as its viability as a comic book, it's pretty badass. I mean, it's incredibly well written, and I actually technically feel that one of the beauties of this book is an issue that Garrick holds, and that's that we have no idea how or when Peter Parker's coming back. I mean, we kind of I think we all, when we started reading this, expected them to cop out and for Peter Parker to be back within, the next 3 or 4 issues. And
Isn't that
here
the
we
best
are,
part of it though? Like,
months
isn't that the
down the
best
road.
part of
Yeah,
it for
and
you?
he's still gone. We've been tricked. Um,
It's
and it
honestly
and
like actually I love the fact that Peter is not there at all.
Thank you.
And
I agree with you.
and
I
I,
hate
I
all
really
three of
like
you.
hold
I
on.
really like the
Also,
dynamic that they're playing with, because Otto arguably is way more productive than what Peter ever was.
but he does.
And
He's not Peter though. Like,
I know he's not Peter, but that's the whole point.
And that's kind of the thing. I love this book. It's really well written. It's awesome. But I kind of like I wasn't really reading a Spider-Man book. I was reading a Peter Parker book. I mean,
Exactly.
he's the most relatable dude I think in the comic book universe. I mean,
I
he
mean,
screws
Superman is
up
the
more
most
than anyone
relatable for
else.
me because I was born on a different planet and I
You've
can bench the sun. So
you've
I
been
just really love it. I
navigated.
mean, he's one of the most iconic superheroes of all time, and I think it's really cool of Marvel that Peter Parker is not Spider-Man anywhere right now.
yeah.
Like even in the Ultimate Universe, he's not Spider-Man.
I
So
hate and fear that very fact. Because and I know we'll talk about this later with you, Jordan, but um, I mean, there's a big event going, and we'll just talk about it. In the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker dies and is replaced by Miles Morales. Um, I don't know that I want that to happen here.
I mean, Miles is the only character in the Ultimate Universe that I even really care about, and that I think anybody cares about.
amen.
And I love the Ultimate version of Spider-Man.
So
I like.
I'm glad we have a lot of different, schools of thought around it, because it's definitely it's the number one selling comic book that Marvel produces right now, and it's for a reason. It's a really interesting book. It's a cool read. If you get a chance, go check it out.
Well, I mean,
Um,
I don't know if it still is, but I know
it is.
when I went to a well, hold on, when I went to a couple of Diamond distributor shows here a few months ago, it was the top selling comic book that Diamond was releasing to well that was they were distributing. So I mean it was more than Marvel's best book. For a time it was the best book.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if it's still like that. I'm not sure how many people are feeling the way that Garrick is and that I kind of am. They're kind of missing Peter Parker and
Well, it's still the highest selling Marvel book right now. Um, so that was according to what I looked at earlier. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to my third book, and we can revisit that next week because I'll probably bring that with me next week too. The last book I want to bring up, and I will try to speed this one up a little bit, is Forever Evil, and that is the first entire DC universe-wide crossover event that DC has done post New 52. And basically, the premise of this story is that the at the end of the Trinity War, the Justice Leagues, all three of them, the Justice League, Justice League of America, and Justice League Dark, are all dead. And the Crime Syndicate, which is essentially an evil version of the Justice League, has ripped their way from Earth 3 to our Earth, which is considered Earth Prime. And they are now taking over our planet and running it like a criminal organization. And it's a cool book because the premise of the story is, with no Justice League around, who would step up to the plate and defend the Earth? And so far, at the end of
only
the
Black Adam.
yeah, so at the end of the first three issues, you see Lex Luthor has formed his own Justice League with uh, with Bizarro Superman, which is a clone of Superman that he created. You have Black Manta. You also have a couple other characters that aren't really as important, the Flash's Rogues Gallery and things like that. But it's a cool book. It's a little bit it's a very Jeff Johns book, and its reach is very broad. Are you guys reading this at all?
I've read the first issue. Yeah, I have them in my pull box. I just haven't had a chance to pick them up yet.
I've read right up until Black Adam's arrival, when he and Superman, or well, Uberman or whatever, get down in the
Ultraman.
daily whatever. And
Man.
I wish I cared.
Yeah.
When they fight,
Wow.
like I'm a big fan of DC's like Marvel family, so I read
Yeah.
those issues, but I don't put a lot of faith in Jeff Johns' ability to write big events. I think he's an amazing writer, and I like him when he's on his own book that's going to stretch on until infinity. But whenever he writes these big events, he always gets me really hyped, and then right at the end, I feel like he's gotten so excited about his next project that and then it was Swamp Thing, go,
Yeah.
and I'm already convinced that's going to happen here. Like at the end of this, Lex Luthor detonates a bomb or something, and scene back to Green Lantern.
Well, there's two things with Forever Evil that's really got my attention. The first is that the crime syndicate has captured Nightwing, and they've revealed his identity to the entire world. So the lasting ramifications for that and the Batman universe is going to be huge. And then the second thing is the crime syndicate brought with them somebody with a hood over their head when they entered our Earth Prime, and that is the person that the crime syndicate is most afraid of. They have him captured, and it's gonna be interesting to see who it is underneath the hood. And I'm sure we'll talk about Forever Evil in the future because it's selling really well, and I think it's a good book. I agree with Chris on pretty much all of his Jeff Johns esque problems. I do feel he has those issues, but overall, check it out. It's worth it for the $6 you're going to spend to get caught up. Unfortunately, with a series wide or a universe wide crossover event, if you want the full picture, you have to buy everything. They had a whole villains month dedicated to this thing with hundreds of issues of villains related comic books. But check it out if you get a chance. Check it out. If not a big deal. But that's definitely one of my top picks for this month. I think who's going next? Was it Garrick was going, or was it Chris?
Yeah, I'm going next.
Go for it, brother.
All
Step up.
right. So the first book that I'm bringing this week is The Flash. And The Flash just started. The latest issue, number 25, was his 0 hour issue, and I didn't really like it. I thought it was pretty boring, so I'm gonna skip it. And we're gonna talk about everything else
Respectable.
before that. I mean, it just started, so it could end up being something interesting, but I didn't care for it too much. So I really want to talk about what came before the 0 hour issue.
Real fast about this 0 hour. Is that his like origin story too,
No,
or
it's Batman's.
Yeah, it's
Batman had there's a couple different characters that they've worked into as tie-ins that don't really add anything, in my opinion, to the 0 year. But the Flash ends up showing up in Gotham.
interesting? And I haven't been reading the Flash, so maybe they cover this. I actually think far more than Batman, the Flash deserves an origin story that's retold.
Hmm.
Um,
It's not really an origin story. It's just him before he was the Flash, and he kind of shows up and is investigating something, and it's just
right, and what I'm
eh.
saying is I would rather him get a full
Oh yeah,
origin
yeah.
story because everybody knows Batman's origin story, but other than potentially remembering that he's holding a beaker and lightning strikes him, not everyone really knows what's up with the Flash. And since with him showing up in the Arrow universe and well,
Yeah,
getting his own television series, that just seems far more relevant to me. Um, whatever. He's also cooler than Batman. Continue.
All right.
feel your pain.
Okay, so the latest arc um, started with the Flash in a tussle with his rogues gallery, and he opens up a portal to the Speed Force and gets him and some other people caught inside of it. And when they eventually get out, everybody that was stuck in there with him is touched by the Speed Force and gets some kind of super speed power. And not all of
My
them are like the same.
unfortunately, mine was blinking.
What? Oh, and not all of them are like the same as the Flash. They all run super fast. They all do different things, and eventually they start getting picked off one by one in these mysterious murders. And as the Flash is investigating them, he finds out that it's actually the Reverse Flash, somebody he hasn't met in the New 52 as of yet, actually killing all these people. And the reason that he's going around killing all these people is because they are taking up so much of the Speed Force, and he needs it to travel back in time. It's a convoluted way of traveling back in time. Basically, he runs fast, and he wants to go back in time and change something. And the Reverse Flash that we have here is not any that we've had before. It's actually Daniel West, brother to Iris West, who's introduced.
Spoilers.
Uh,
Yeah, you got to
sorry.
let people know,
I'm
bro.
sorry,
Like
spoiler
somebody,
alert.
somebody there, somebody on this
It's too
cast
late.
probably was just like, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, I've been waiting
We just
months to
lost
know this."
37 viewers
Uh, I'm sorry, everybody. Spoiler alert. It's Daniel West,
who you've never
who
heard of.
nobody's ever heard of before ever.
At
So,
least it
Continue.
wasn't.
Oh,
At
go
least it
ahead.
wasn't. At least it wasn't Kanye West.
That's true. That's true.
so I was super excited when I heard and when I was reading this that the Reverse Flash was going to come back, and I thought it was going to be some crazy thing that he goes back in time to ruin the Flash's life, in some epic way. No, it turns out he's going back in time, spoiler alert, to kill his deadbeat dad who treated him and his sister wrong.
Noble cause.
So the Flash ends up being sucked back in time with him and eventually convinces him, along with his sister, that he's being crazy and a monster and he shouldn't do this. And the Flash runs really fast, gets back into the present time, and beats him. And it was really, really anticlimactic. Like the last fight scene was like 2 pages long, and they don't really do much fighting. They super hyped you up for everything that was coming, and I was let down by the after effects of everything that happened. Are any of you guys reading it? Do you have any thoughts?
I actually read up until the Reverse Flash appeared and was so disappointed with everything about that character. I'm a huge fan of both of the prior Reverse Flashes. I love Professor Zoom and the Reverse Flash, and I think they were some of the coolest, most psychotic villains in the DC universe.
I
And
agree with you. I
nothing
love
about this
Reverse
guy
Flash.
is either of those things.
He looks awesome, but he's
I
just.
disagree with that too. I think he looks like a schmuck.
I think he looks so cool. Like
You're also a schmuck. It's he's not okay. I don't like anything about it, and I don't know. I just thought that's literally when I canceled the book. I read the first issue with the I read the first 2 issues with the Reverse Flash. I see him like murdering the not as fast Speed Force guys, and I no longer cared. It was the dumbest
you
thing.
didn't even want to know what happened at all.
I miss the Reverse Flash, who's literally traveling back in time to murder all of the Flash's friends and family to make him a better hero, so that he has something to fight for.
Well, that's
That
awesome and
that's freaking
everything, and that's
twisted,
what I thought they were gonna like go in that
and that's not
direction,
what
but
this is. It's like, oh, well, my dad hits me. I don't approve of that,
that's
but
literally no. He doesn't
they
even
make
he doesn't even hit him. He like
there's a number he could
they
call. I
have a
mean, that's
they have a flashback. No
I
ha.
see what you
no
did there.
no pun
It's
intended.
too late. It's
they
been made.
they have a
All
flashback
right,
in
all right,
his
all right, all
own.
right, all right, all right, all right. we've gotten knee deep in this. Now, if you're not reading Flash, you probably don't care at this point anymore. So,
I'm
Every
sorry.
Me and Chris Bird are having a heated debate.
yeah,
Anyway,
it's like two girls.
I'm so
You're both pretty, I promise.
I'm sorry. Anyway,
Whoa,
next book
here.
that I'm bringing
There we
in
go.
is Aquaman. Um,
Old Arthur.
Good old Watamang.
Aquaman,
Waterman.
and the coolest thing actually that's happened in the past few issues is the man has the beard.
Waterman.
Waterman has the beard. He's
Good.
rocking it. He's walking around destroying everything. The premise is that Atlan, the original king of Atlantis, has risen from the deep and is trying to take Atlantis back for himself. And in the end,
Can I say that I lost interest in this series? Like it's what Chris was talking about earlier with Forever Evil. Like they did he did the same thing with. I like the first uh like 10 or 12 issues of Aquaman, but it just started dragging on and on. And when it crossed over with Throne of Atlantis, I like literally lost all interest. Like they didn't flesh him out and develop him. Have they done anything about like the character to make him like a little bit less whiny and bratty? Because he seems real bratty.
yeah, actually, that was a problem I was having as well, but I decided to stick to it. And right now, they're actually giving him a lot of depth, giving him a lot of problems that he has to deal with as far as ruling Atlantis. He didn't want to do it. He was being a big baby. He was like, no, there's no way that I can do this. It's nothing I want to do. And then he finally realizes in these past few issues that he needs to step up and be the one to unite the sea and the land and bring peace, and he really decides in the last issue that he's going to do this. And Mara, his wife, says, "No, I can't do this with you. Um, there's no way I can do this with you. We should just live together away from all this stuff." And he actually stays in Atlantis, and there's a few panels that show him just distraught and all this stuff from her leaving him, and I thought it was like a big step forward for Aquaman as a character in the new 52 anyway.
I'm glad that they've taken Aquaman and Jeff Johns has like done the Jeff Johns thing with him and like made him a viable member of the DC universe again because for forever, I mean, for most comic book readers, he is the laughing stock of the comic book world. He talks to fish, you
Yeah.
know? Like
Not
that's his
even
power.
not even just in comic books, like almost like in pop culture in general, he's become like the laughing stock of comic books.
I,
Like anytime you see a comic joke, it's always Aquaman
Yeah.
centered.
and when this comic first came out, that was actually my biggest problem with it. The first issue opens with him in that diner ordering fish sticks or whatever, and like the police there, everyone there makes these jokes like you're Aquaman, you can just talk to fish, you suck, get out of here.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that issue's ever resolved. Like they make those jokes, and then Aquaman never does anything that's like, no, screw you guys, I'm gonna pick this car over my head and throw it through your dog. Like
Well,
that doesn't happen.
well, if you read the Justice League, he actually does some really cool stuff in the beginning
Yeah.
when they like form
I
together. He's got like sharks jumping out of the
Right,
like
yeah, but
destroying.
that doesn't happen in the Aquaman comic where I
Well,
feel that
sure,
issue needs to be resolved.
you're not wrong. Basically, all the stuff he's done thus far has been sea related as far as Aquaman goes. But I mean, that is his realm, so
And I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see if Jeff Johns has just recently left the series. His last issue was this last one, but the biggest thing that, the biggest issue I have with this is that hopefully the next person that writes him will put him in a position where he is um, like a little bit more mainstream, where he has to battle, something outside of just the ocean.
yeah.
What was your last book, or Garrick?
My last book is Earth 2, and this is my favorite book out of the three that I brought today because you brought Batman and I couldn't bring Batman as well. So I brought Earth 2 and a different Batman. Hello, he's here. All right. Anyway, um, the Wonders currently are in a war against Steppenwolf, and he's back to take over the Earth his own way. He says, like before, he was just an instrument, a tool of Darkseid, and this time he's actually doing it for himself. and he has these three what he calls dogs, um, his lackeys basically, that get into a tussle with the Wonders, which currently are Doctor Fate, Green Lantern, the Flash, and Hawk Girl, and they just completely destroy them and um, leave them battered and bruised, but don't kill them for some reason, and we don't really, that doesn't really get addressed later, but uh,
Garrett, can I say something real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
So, just your description of that lost me because I don't read it.
Uh-huh.
Can you, and I don't know if Chris or if Jordan reads it or if anybody else out there reads it, but can you tell me why the hell I would want to read this book if I'm not reading it right now?
I've read right up until like kind of the big reveal in Earth 2, and this is how I would describe it. So in the first couple of issues of the Justice League, you see like the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman do some like serious work to overthrow um, Thanos or whoever that is now, to overthrow Darkseid. Um, and I mean, they survive, and the Justice League is formed, and they continue to just be total badasses. Like they are the cornerstone of the DC universe, and they are pretty much in many ways solely like the only thing that stands between well the DC universe and it getting overtaken by the crime syndicate.
Hmm.
So in Earth 2, the same events start to happen. You know, Darkseid shows up, Steppenwolf is there, like all these badasses show up, um, and they are fought off, like they are removed from the scene. The war is still kind of won. It turns out it's really not, but it's kind of won. But for that war to be won, that same Trinity, they sacrifice themselves. Those three characters die, and so this book's really about the ramifications of a world without the Trinity. And stuff gets pretty dark. It kind of sucks for them. And so you
Wow.
have these same villains, these same threats that are normally solved
Now
by
I'm
that Trinity, and they're not there
now
to
I'm kind of
fix the
sad.
problem.
That was
Uh,
very sad.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
Yeah.
feel like I should put my head down for a little while.
get on my
Maybe
level, kid.
maybe sit the next
I made the feel
maybe
things.
sit the next few plays out.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty cool book. I've actually,
It's definitely the one book out of all of the ones that I know we're going to talk about that I'm not reading that I want to read. So I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out.
it's actually a pretty decent book. It's one of the few books that I've kind of kept up with. I think I'm an issue or two behind now, but that I literally care about none of the characters. But the story itself has been interesting enough that I continue to I pick it up and read it whenever I get a chance, just because I kind of want to know what happens. Because I think one of the things about the new 52 or just any DC universe is that a lot of things are overcome the moment like they introduce the Trinity. Like that's the Deus Ex Machina of this universe. You know, you need to fix a problem. We just got to hold out until Superman shows up. Um, but that's not an answer here. In fact, as Garrick has kind of revealed, it's sort of the problem.
Yeah.
Superman becomes the problem in this universe and not the solution.
And that fact alone kind of makes me want to read that book. I don't
Yeah.
read it, but one of the biggest complaints that I have, like in the DC universe at all, is that I feel like a lot of times, especially when it's overarching stories that cross books, that everybody's kind of just waiting around for Superman. Like it always centers around him. So a universe where he's kind of the problem, intrigues me.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool.
So check it out. It
Yeah,
sounds pretty
damn.
good. I want to read it. Um, all right, next is do we have Jordan or we have Chris going next?
I'll go since I'm technically next.
Go ahead.
All right.
So my first book is Uncanny Avengers. It's Rick Remender's book, his Avengers book, which I think there's 4 or 5 Avengers books going on. In my opinion, this is probably the best. If I was going to recommend you read one of the Avengers books, I would
It's
probably
definitely
recommend this
it's
one.
definitely the easiest to jump
It's
onto
definitely
because if you're not going to go back in time and read 40 issues of Hickman's Avengers run, then
right.
Uncanny Avengers is definitely your best.
And Uncanny Avengers is it's kind of spurned out of the Avengers versus X-Men event that happened way early in the year. They're the Unity Squad, whereas they are like half just regular Avengers, half mutants. And there's a really cool dynamic going on where the Scarlet Witch is part of the Unity Squad, and everybody kind of still hates her. So, and Rogue's also in there, and Wolverine is also in there. So there's a lot of cool tension going on between the three of them. Rogue absolutely hates the Scarlet Witch, and the balance that they have there is kind of cool. Um, this latest issue, or if is anybody reading it?
I'm reading. I'm reading it, except I stopped reading about the point when the Apocalypse twins show up because I just it was one of those books that I wanted to dedicate more time to, so I'll probably read it this week and catch up so I can contribute later.
Well, I won't ruin it, but some pretty cool stuff has happened lately. They're a little bit farther in that arc with the Apocalypse twins, where some cool twists and turns have happened. This latest issue, issue 14, since nobody's read it, I'm not going to spoil anything. But this latest issue 14 has a ton of stuff going on. They're kind of closing up some storylines that have been around since way before Avengers versus X-Men. So it's definitely a recommended read.
Awesome. It's one of those books that I'm a big Rick Remender fan. I read Captain America. I've read all of Uncanny X Factor, and it was awesome. Or sorry, Uncanny X Force.
Yeah.
And it was really good. There's 3 issues of Uncanny X Force that I never got around to reading.
It's embarrassing. Why didn't you read those?
Because Chris Bird was supposed to provide me with them, and he's less than reliable. But it's definitely one of the
You're
books
sweet.
that I like Rick Remender's writing. He does a really good job. I just haven't got a chance to finish to pick it up yet. But
And he's done some really cool things with some characters that I haven't cared about in a while. Like I haven't cared about Rogue or Wonder Man or Havoc in a long time, and he's kind of made them relevant again. So it's definitely a nice read.
cool.
Which this is just an out of left field recommendation since you say that. If anybody wants to read a book with characters that are completely irrelevant but is way good, Peter David's X Factor, which just ended a couple months ago, totally the best book with irrelevant characters. But continue.
Cool.
Mention something else irrelevant.
What's your next book, Jordan?
My next book is Cataclysm. It's the Ultimate event that's going on right now. Technically, I guess
Jesus.
the official title is Cataclysm: The Ultimate's Last Stand. And I really wanted to talk about it because everybody thinks that this is probably it for the Ultimate Universe. And I would agree. I'd say the Ultimate Universe at the beginning was kind of made as an easier way for new comic book readers to come in and start. And with the success of the movies and just Marvel in general, I would say that need is long since passed. So it's really, really interesting. Whereas Galactus from the 616 universe, the main Marvel continuity, has come over to the Ultimate Universe and is basically just wrecking the place. And if anybody's caught up with anything in the Ultimate Universe, it's kind of a mess as it is right now. So it's really going to be interesting to see if that really is the end of the Ultimate Universe and they stop making those books after this. It's focusing a lot right now on the Ultimate version of Spider-Man, which we talked a little bit about earlier. And I honestly think that somehow Miles Morales out of this is going to end up in the main Marvel continuity over in the 616 universe.
That's been I don't even know if it's a popular rumor, but I mean, I know you and I have talked about that before, and so this is kind of my big worry. This is where I'm going to tie this into the Superior Spider-Man. It worries me that since, like we kind of mentioned, Miles Morales is by far the most popular thing to come out of the Ultimate Universe. People aren't that upset that he replaced Peter Parker. They actually respond really well to him. He's easily just as relatable, and maybe even more so to younger audiences now that Peter Parker's kind of grown up. And I'm terrified that when they bring him over, he's actually going to replace Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man, and that we may very well never get Peter Parker back.
And that's the rumor that I've heard a lot surrounding Spider-Man and the Ultimate or Cataclysm here is that he will end up being the Spider-Man in the main continuity.
And can I say that I'm not about that life? I'm not, I really like Miles Morales, but like I and maybe I'm just salty and old, but I grew up with Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and frankly, if anyone else is Spider-Man, I will continue to read it, but I'll be slightly disappointed.
I mean, he's one of those things where like there's some supplemental characters in lore that you can change in the Green Lanterns and things like that. But if you change that core foundation of Superman, Batman, Spider-Man,
Captain America, I guess.
Yeah, Captain America, you really lose the presence of the character, what they're about. And I think that if you change the reason that I think Superior Spider-Man is working well is because in the back of everyone's mind, they're hoping that Peter Parker comes back.
Not even hoping; it's just obvious.
Yeah,
like you just knew. I mean, even when I picked it up, and I'm a seasoned veteran of this comic book reading stuff. I knew Like I read the first 3 issues, maybe even the first issue, and I told Ron Davis, our local comic shop owner, I was like, obvious, he's coming back. Ghost in the Machine over here. He's in the back of Otto's mind. They're gonna have a mental fight. He wins.
And it's really
And
obvious.
they have that mental fight.
Yeah.
Peter Parker does
And
not
it-
win.
Yeah.
It's really obvious right now too. Like if you're all the way caught up in that comic, just about everybody is super suspicious at this point that something's way off with Peter.
Yeah, exactly. What's your last book, Jordan?
My last book is New Avengers, but it's pretty much Infinity because that's all that they've been talking about lately. So have
Yeah.
any of you guys keep up with Infinity all the way through?
I actually read
Totally.
everything. It took me a little bit of time, but I read all of the new John Hickman Avengers run, all of the Infinity and all of New Avengers. So
Yeah.
it took a little bit of time for me to get caught up, and I've read everything, and I gotta say, it was like running a marathon.
It was
You know?
super disappointing. Like I was expecting something amazing to happen at the end, and it kind of just ended.
And Jordan and I talked about this, and spoilers ahead. At the end of this book, when this whole deal with Thanos is resolved, the Marvel universe is not impacted in any meaningful way.
Exactly.
Nothing happens. You could pick up any other book, turn to page 1 the following day, and it hasn't changed at all. I mean, it was just it started so strong and then ends up being wildly unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it disappoints me because Marvel's known for sort of their game changing events. I mean, even like the whole Avengers versus X-Men thing, while not the coolest of story events, had a lasting impact. I mean,
New mutants and everything, yeah.
right. And I mean, earlier before that, when Wolverine and Cyclops are going at it, when we see that split in the sort of the X-Men side of the Marvel universe, that has lasting impacts. I mean, even to this day, the X-Men are split into a multitude of groups. I mean,
which all new X-Men is great, by the way. If you don't,
it's a super. It's an awesome book. But this didn't do anything like that. It just ends, and then you're like, all right, whatever. Thanos is frozen in some kind of space amber. His son running amok. His son literally gets abducted by a man in what is basically a space van, and is taken off into the universe to do bad.
That's the problem with that is, like you said, all it does is replace one villain with another. Nothing really happens throughout the entire story that impacts any of the rest of the continuity in Marvel, and you really come out of it feeling robbed and cheated that you put all that time in.
Right.
You gain a couple new characters, a couple a small scale, or I'll say a huge scale battle, but nothing with no real long-term lasting ramifications.
It's a huge scale battle that happens on like the fringes of the universe where it's not coming back to affect, our core universe, that.
Honestly,
it's basically the equivalent.
Nobody even cares about out there.
It's like the equivalent of if you watched like the movie Pearl Harbor, and if at the end of them being attacked, they were just like, you know what, I don't think we're gonna.
Let's not drop these bombs, guys.
We're gonna call that like a mulligan, and we'll just let them do whatever they want because it doesn't affect anything.
The only thing that came out of that whole Infinity thread that I really liked was it's actually the variant that we're giving away. Mighty Avengers kind of came together after that. I really like the idea of Luke Cage having another team. I like the dynamic that he brings. But other than that, overall a disappointment for me.
Yeah, not okay with that book. I was for a long time, but
when it's not during Infinity, though, New Avengers is actually a pretty good book. I mean, it basically revolves around the Illuminati. They've kicked Captain America out because he always wants to be nice and nobody likes that. And when it's not doing Infinity, it's actually a pretty good book. So I'm interested to see where it goes now that Infinity's over.
Let's move to Chris's books because.
And mine are actually easy to do because unlike a few of you, I'm not going to give far-reaching spoilers. I legitimately expect each and every one of you to read these books, so I won't spoil too much. I'm actually going to start. I don't know what I'm supposed to start with, but I'm starting with Hawkeye. Is that what we're doing?
That's the picture I have up.
I'm not actually looking. So Hawkeye is a book that I guess very obviously spins out of the Avengers. And this book is about what Hawkeye, what our Clint Barton does when he's not avenging stuff. And he does some cool stuff. I mean, he does his laundry. He has a pet dog. It's both very cool things I think we can all relate with.
Pet dog.
He also happens to live in an apartment building, just a rundown apartment that's owned by a group of hilarious Russian gangsters who he very quickly comes into contact with. He meets up with Kate Bishop, the other Hawkeye from the Young Avengers, who is not okay with the sorry state he's kind of in when he lives at home. It's a bizarre book, and it kind of shocked me when this came out. I thought it was going to be the dumbest thing, because who cares about a superhero when they're not getting all super heroic? But I think Nick and I talked about this a lot back when we worked together before he left us all and betrayed us.
Yep.
And this book is actually the Marvel television series we all kind of wanted. It's perfectly serialized. It's hilarious. It moves from issue to issue in a way that would fit on I think the television awesomely.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's I mean, some of the best moments in this book have been the smallest things, like watching Tony Stark, who's supposed to be a genius, try a technological genius, try to hook up an old, out of date surround sound system in television,
And
and then not.
untangle Clint Barton's DVR.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like small, stupid things. You're like, that doesn't seem like it would be very interesting at all, but it turns out to be an amazing story.
There's an issue dedicated to Clint Barton trying to label all of his trick arrows, and he actually comes into conflict with Kate Bishop, who thinks that trick arrows are the dumbest thing, and it sounds absurd, but it's hilarious. They also write an issue. This isn't really a spoiler, but it's probably I think artistically the coolest thing that's happened in this book. Written entirely from the perspective of Clint Barton's dog, Arrow.
It's really good.
I mean, there's no dialogue. The only language this dog can understand are words like play and ball and food. And this entire story is told from the perspective of a dog, which blew my mind with how perfect it was for this series. So if you're not reading it, you're out of your mind. You really should be.
I
Matt
agree with
Fraction
you.
is a genius. That the whole series is amazing.
Yeah.
It's absurdly good. So go read it, or we're not friends anymore.
Cool.
My next book. What are we doing next? So let's go to the next one. I'm going to talk about Avengers Arena now. So Avengers Arena is a weird one. It involves a lot of characters that, within the context of the Marvel Universe, probably completely unnecessary. These are the sidekicks. Some of them are ex-members of the Young Avengers, the Runaways. Wolverine's sometimes sidekick, clone daughter X-23 is a part of it. Justin, the kid with the Sentinel that spun out like a long time ago when Scarlet Witch took away the Age of M stuff, when she took away the mutants' powers. All these characters show up. Darkhawk's in it, and they're kidnapped by the also largely forgotten villain Arcade, an old X-Men and Spider-Man villain, who's known for his dumb arcade-like killer traps and his murder worlds. And he kidnaps all of these young superheroes and sidekicks that, again, the Marvel Universe doesn't need in any way to function, and he forces them to fight each other to the death on an island. So think the Hunger Games, or if you've seen the better version of that, think Battle Royale, but with super powered teens. And for the same reasons that I guess that book series, I don't know, is really popular, but that Battle Royale was popular. This is also just as cool. And I mean, the story itself isn't. I guess I would say it lacks the depth that sometimes shines in Hawkeye, and certainly in Superior Spider-Man. And I guess Batman's parents are dead, so that's pretty deep too. But the unbridled action and silliness that take place in this book make it, I think, more than worth reading. I mean, it's just legitimately fun, and it gets a little intense sometimes too. But it has dinosaurs and barbarians and magic and killer robots and explosions and poisonous chemicals. I mean, it has everything you need for a good time. And it's another book that it's silly that, like Garrett Gilmore here, isn't reading.
I'm
Gary?
sorry.
Yeah, so
You should lend them to me.
I'm not
read
doing
them.
that.
All right, never mind.
I'll admit that just because it was very Hunger Gamesy, and that's the way that it was kind of promoted, that's the reason that I never picked it up.
I agree.
I
That
think
was the
the
same
Hunger
way that I
Games
was.
scares some people off with its associations with teen romance and tween angst or whatever. But if we could all remember if you've seen the Battle Royale, you'll notice that the Avengers Arena symbol here on the screen it's a clear ripoff, or at least we'll call it a nod to that particular symbol. And I think is the real inspiration for this book, not the Hunger Games, which we'll just say is in many ways, wildly derivative of Battle Royale. But that's what this is also, I guess, wildly derivative of. And that movie is way more intense. Quentin Tarantino actually said that. I assume you're all familiar with him. Royale is such a good movie that he wishes he made it. Like, it is the perfect movie.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times. It's really good
Yeah, and that's
and
what
really creepy.
this is trying to sort of nod its head at. And it's awesome. Sometimes it's similarly creepy. Um, I mean, and I think they're just in general, all of us are a little uncomfortable with the idea of kids being forced to murder each other, which is really where Battle Royale gets you, and certainly where
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'd prefer that more kids murder each other.
Makes for good entertainment, I think.
So
Yeah.
give it a shot. I'll move to my next book now. We'll try to speed through this here. So that's Young Avengers, written by Kieran Gillen, who should be better known. I mean, he does write a lot of Marvel books right now, but I don't think is as popular as Matt Fraction or say Jeff Johns, any of those big names, or even Rick Remender within the comic book universe. So Young Avengers is a book that spins out of a couple of other titles that largely involve themselves with child superheroes and sidekicks. So one of them is the Children's Crusade, and the other Young Avengers book that came before that, which is just a group of, I guess, misfit teens who idolize and imitate a lot of major superheroes. Like Captain America is imitated by the Patriot, and the Hulk is imitated by Hulkling, and Quicksilver is imitated by Speed. You get the idea.
Yeah.
But it turns out that there's something a little bit wrong with all of these superheroes. None of them are quite what they seem, or as it turns out, in any way related to the superheroes that they idolize and imitate. I mean, the Hulkling is a Skrull human hybrid who is hated and feared, and eventually they hunted down by the Skrull. Actually, early on in the original Young Avengers book, Kid Loki is in this. He actually spins out of a different book, Journey into Mystery, which for a while was also penned by Kieran Gillen. And if no one here has read the Young Loki arc on Journey into Mystery, read the hell out of that book. It it will break your heart in ways I don't think comic books have ever touched most people. Not inappropriately, but just very sadly. And read that book, because this actually resolves some of the things that at the end of that book ruined me and continue to impact my ability to sleep at night to this day. This is a book that's very similar to the original Young Avengers. These same kids take up their avenging mantle again. This time, not so much to save the world, but to solve a major problem that they create when a couple of the characters, Hulkling and Wiccan, try to bring their parents back from the dead. And it results in them getting some weird netherworld version who is I don't know, fairly reminiscent of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers pod people. And whenever they get near them, they go batshit. Some bad stuff happens. But it's an interesting book. I mean, it's really strongly written. You become immediately attached to these characters and the things that Kieran Gillen does to them. Oftentimes very negative and emotional, but in ways that you don't really realize until they've wormed their way into your heart and began to tear at things, which I guess sounds terrible, but is really freaking cool as an artistic tool. So check it out too. I don't want to spoil too much. It's hard to talk about without giving away major plot points. But think of this as being the other side of the Avengers Arena coin, whereas that is all sort of escapist, gratuitous violence and fun and sci-fi and superpowers colliding. This has all that same science fiction, magic, superpowers, and robots. But it's not as gratuitous. It's not all about just having fun. It's actually more about the consequences of having that fun within the real world, and just how much you can hurt the people around you whenever you're screwing around with superpowers. So check it out. It's pretty sweet.
Cool.
I'm gonna end it there, since I don't think any of you guys are reading that book, even though you all should be if you were my friends.
Well, I mean, you should respond to people via text message whenever they call you, but you don't do that. So,
Sure, you don't do that.
So that being said, we reviewed about 12 books today, a lot of different stuff, and I think now is a good time to mention that if you have advice, or if you're listening to the podcast and there's things that you'd like to see going forward, like, hey, you talked about way too many comics, talk about one comic or something like that. We're open to all kinds of suggestions. We're just doing this stuff for fun primarily, but we'd like to eventually get it to the
Actually
point
doing it
where,
entirely for profit, so
well, yeah, I mean
donation
that
button.
that too, but seriously, you should go ahead and give us money. Um, it it I mean, at least for me, it's one of those things where I want to get some feedback from people that aren't necessarily people that are on this podcast. I want to see what you guys think about some of the stuff that's out there, and I know that those guys do too. Um, the last thing, I guess, I know that this is something that we said we were going to talk about last week, a chance to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it this week. Has nothing to do with comic books. It has to do with film. We did want to spend the last couple minutes here before we do our sign-offs talking about the desolation of Smaug.
Oh.
Maug.
And let's, I think, because I'm not sure that everybody in the, what I'll call the audience has seen it, we should let's try to
Avoid
avoid major
spoilers.
I'm
spoilers for the
spoiling
time.
Yeah,
everything.
That's likely
yeah,
true.
There's a
yeah.
dragon. Spoiler alert.
Motherfucker.
There's hobbits.
So,
I don't
All right.
know.
so I'm gonna
I'll hang
I'm
on.
gonna I'm gonna start off just, and this is really all I'm looking to get around this is just a little bit of dialogue around how you guys felt around the movie. And if I'm gonna start it out, I'm gonna say that there is no reason for there to be three Hobbit films that are 3 hour, 2.5 hours apiece. It seems like that you can you can leave for me. I felt like you could leave the theater at any given time and not really miss a whole lot of information that's crucial to the plot of the film. Like the original Lord of the Rings for me is such a good movie because it's such or a set of movies because it's such a broad, like there's so many things going on and they all work together towards an ultimate conclusion. And it feels like butter spread across way too much toast with this movie.
Yes.
feel
That's
like
impossible.
Yes.
There's
That's a that's a
um,
problem, not just like in this series, but in movies in general. Like the last Harry Potter book probably didn't really need to be two movies. The last Twilight book probably didn't need to be two movies. I think it's more a money
yeah,
thing.
you can make a lot more money off of three movies. I actually think that The Hobbit probably needed two movies, but I question three. I actually think I really like the second movie. By the way, I think it was paced really well. I enjoyed every moment of it, and have very few complaints about the film as a whole. Most of my problems rest in the first movie, which contained an unnecessary amount of walking, standing around, of just idleness. I think they really had to stretch that into a feature length film, and you could really tell. And I saw it a second time because I'm a grown man, and if you don't watch a Hobbit or Lord of the Rings movie twice, you might as well not even watch it the first time.
Yeah.
And the second time, I fell asleep. It just couldn't do it for me. I actually passed out in a movie theater like I'm 70 years old. Um, and that sucks because I'm really worried the third movie is going to do the same thing, that they're going to be stretched for material and have a few idle moments where people sit around and wonder, what do we do about this dragon, guys?
Hmm.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
Um,
there
I
was
I'm
one point in the movie that I was really actually just bored in the
Holy
second movie.
crap, Garrick is still on this
I'm
podcast?
still
Hey, he's still
here.
here.
You
Oh.
guys were talking about Marvel and stuff, and ugh.
Oh, okay, that's
So,
true.
we'll have words.
there was one point in the movie that I was just genuinely bored and was just it needed to move along. And this movie actually, I disagree with Bird. I felt it dragged on a lot more than the first one did. Uh,
Agreed. I
I
thought
was
so.
just tired at the end of the movie. Like I was disappointed with the way it ended.
I
There was one really cool scene that I liked in the middle of the movie with spoiler alert, he's been in all the trailers. Legolas is in this movie. If you don't know that, I'm sorry.
talked about the river scene.
Yeah, the river
Yeah,
scene is
I
by
actually think
far the coolest part of the whole
that's the best
movie.
action sequence I think of any of these films.
Yeah, that really was interesting to me, and that was a lot of fun. And it was just after that, nothing was as good as that point in the movie for me. I thought the
That's
Smaug point with Bilbo was really cool, and all of Smaug's dialect and everything he said, he sounded awesome. The stuff he said was awesome. but that one point early in the movie was really the highlight for me. So it just kind of dragged
That,
on after that.
see that I don't know. I felt it was decently well paced even after that point. I mean there were some slow points when they
I
encountered
just felt like they
guard.
spent the whole
But
time they spend this whole trilogy so far just getting captured over and over again. Like they got captured by some trolls, then they got captured by some goblins, then they got captured by some elves,
Captain
then
Ash.
they got captured by Smog kind of. And it's like how many more times can you get captured before like someone just executes you? Like you can't all the villains can't be that bad at this. It's a boring premise for a film for me. Like it's just
I
I'm gonna walk into
actually
this cave and get
largely
captured. Then
agree
I'm gonna walk into this cave and get
with the
captured. Then I'm
first
gonna walk
movie.
into this
I
cave and
was
get
far
captured.
more attached to this one, and I think I liked it an awful lot more. Um, what is it?
Maybe the whole point is that hobbits are easy to capture but hard to kill. Maybe that's just the whole thing.
In his defense, Bilbo did his use his skills that he learned in the mountains.
That I learned from years of training.
Um, so I guess that's kind of it for The Hobbit. Our only movie
Go
title
ahead.
we were going to
I
talk.
actually agree with Nick about one thing, even though most of the rest he said about the movie not being good was totally wrong. It does end where it shouldn't. Um,
Yeah,
it should have gone further or should have ended sooner.
yeah.
This isn't much of a spoiler. It ends in a cliffhanger. I mean that's real
It
talk.
ends
And
in a
it
cool line, the coolest line
Yeah.
that the dragon says in
sure, but just
anything.
if you think, I mean,
Oh,
I
I didn't
assume
think
you've
it
read
was
the
a good
book.
ending. I said it just sounded
But
cool.
there's going to come a moment in this third book that is just entirely disjointed, where they have to move from the resolution of one threat to the introduction of another,
Hmm.
and there's going to be no way to smoothly transition there. You can already see how they're going to do it, and I'll let everybody watch the movie before they agree with me that it's super obvious. But it's going to be awkward and it's going to be clumsy. And I'm in advance. I'm just not okay with it. It's
One thing that Nick commented on about the first trilogy that was so good was with all the things that were happening, everything seemed to make sense and fit like a perfect puzzle. And this series so far, there's a lot of things that are happening away from the hobbits that doesn't fit. Like all the
well,
things that are happening, just you just get random cuts away
I,
from the main story, and it doesn't really matter. I
It's
guess.
it's
I think it's because
it seems
moving
like they're
something
always
to film
like, oh
lets
hey,
you solve
remember when
the
this
problem with
happened?
the Lord of the Rings that the Hobbit never had. One of the biggest problems for, and if you've read the Lord of the Rings, you kind of know, is that it reads like a history book. There's way too much information, and a lot of that, the walking around, the history of the Middle Earth, you can leave out comfortably in a movie and just take the action, take the adventure, take the drama, and that's your movie. And I think it's
Yeah.
really easy to do that. But The Hobbit was written as a children's book, so it lacks all that additional detail, all that additional information. It's just kind of an adventure. And they're trying to do the reverse of what they did with the Lord of the Rings. They're trying to extrapolate all this extra drama and action and excitement, and even like character that
And it's
wasn't a part of the.
killing me inside is what it's doing. It's
And
killing me to
the
watch
thing is, I
this.
don't know outside of like the cartoon, which if you've never seen the Hobbit cartoon,
Hello?
um, you need to watch it.
Go
It's
to your local public
probably,
library.
yeah, I
I'm
was gonna say
sure they
probably a
have it.
public library. I don't
Might be
know if
on
it's anywhere
YouTube.
else.
I don't.
Watch that movie. It's that's perfect. But The Hobbit is a children's book, and these characters aren't really heroes, with the exception of maybe Bilbo. I mean, these dwarves are just they're dwarves. They're greedy. They want gold. They're not interested in recovering their lost homeland. They don't want to slay a dragon. They literally want Bilbo to sneak in there, steal a bunch of gold so that they can get rich and get out. I mean, that's the Hobbit. I mean, there's no like unseen threat from a dark lord.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, all
there's
that.
just too many there's
that's
too much milking of the Lord of the Rings franchise with The Hobbit. I mean, it could be one movie if it had to. It could be two movies, but
Yeah.
three movies is just too much.
right.
I
It's
agree. Three movies is way too much.
I mean, personally for me, I don't want to get off on too big of a tangent here, but it's insulting that I've read the Hobbit and I've seen the old cartoon and they're just milking this thing because they know that I've bought three different versions of Lord of the Rings. I bought it on DVD, on Blu-ray, and then on extended Blu-ray. Like they know they can get that money out of me, and I'm too stupid to not go into the theater. And I keep watching, like I'm
I mean,
seeing
don't say I'm
characters like
stupid.
I'm seeing characters that aren't in the books, characters that, that I'm like, ooh, should I care about this person? Oh wait, no, I don't.
Yeah, not at
Like
all.
you're never gonna show up again.
However, once
Um,
again, I will say, as much as I doubted the addition of Legolas, and Garrick hinted at this, he's probably one of the coolest things about this movie.
all right.
Hands down, he's the one character I think he did right. I'm not sure about all of the dwarves, but Legolas feels surprisingly natural. So he's one complaint I don't have. Um,
So I guess since we've been talking for quite a while now, we can go ahead and wrap it up. Um, First thing I want to do is I want to give another shout out to our sponsor for this week, which was Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming in the Morgantown Mall. We are going to run a contest on our YouTube page. Um, Garrick is going to post the picture of our YouTube page, our Facebook page, our Twitter, all that stuff up here. And all you really have to do to enter the contest to win the variants that we talked about before is to go onto the YouTube page, leave a comment, leave us something insightful. Tell us what we're doing good, tell us what we're doing bad, but try to be, for somewhat, try to be serious. We're trying to, we're making this, not only for ourselves and for the ridiculous amount of cheddar that we hope to make from it, but also
yeah, if we don't get rich, we blame all of you.
it's also really to just talk about comics and just listening to us talk here. I think we've learned a lot of stuff about what we need to do in the future. But leave us a comment, we'll look at them all, we'll decide, we'll throw some names in a hat, we'll pick out your winners. And then all you have to do to get your variant or to get your prize is show up to the Four Horsemen and tell them, hey, these guys, we'll tell them who wins. All you have to do is show up and get your stuff. It'll be there waiting for you. And really, all we're looking for again is just a little bit of advice. What can make what can make our podcast better? After that, we'll probably do some trivia and stuff like that. That'll really help us out in the future. But again, this week's podcast sponsored by Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming in the Morgantown Mall. Go in, talk to Ron Davis, nicest guy you'll ever meet. Talk to Dane Lumen, general
A
manager
guy you'll ever
extraordinary.
meet.
Yeah, he's a guy you'll meet.
Oh, and
Go in
if
there.
you guys
Caleb and
can't get
Seth
the
are there
Four
too.
Horsemen, if you live in some unreachable place, we'll send you the variant. Just let us know.
Yeah,
If you
we'll
win and you're not in Morgantown, we can mail it out to you, no
yeah,
problem.
not a big deal. Forgot about
$20
that.
shipping. Sure.
Uh,
No big deal.
yeah. And then, of course, we'll require some more monetary gain here in the future. We're probably going to set up a PayPal site in the future here for donations. If you guys want to donate to help us, improve the quality of the podcast, or even just for us to get like Ciroc or something nice for when we're going out and balling on a budget. But I thank everybody for tuning in this week. It's been really cool. Hopefully, we have all that stuff up on the screen. Again, I can't see it. Who cares? I want to also thank Jordan for being on the podcast this week. He's going to be on here from now on with us. This is the only the only comics podcast gains 25% more members each week, so that you can be sure of.
Yep.
We
don't.
Yeah, except like from now on we won't.
No, there's
It's
So
the
we're
diversity
adding
that I
2
bring.
more next week, so be
we're
prepared.
probably gonna
I
have.
actually will boldly say that we will double or triple our numbers next week.
I think we will.
I also want to bring up real quick, just as a last thing. I did get confirmation from Kyle Higgins, the writer of Nightwing, that he's going to be a guest on the show eventually here once we can work it into our schedule. And I also got Michael Nightmage Wilson, who's a pro cosplayer, is also going to be on the show to talk a little bit about cosplay in the future, which is basically the art of making freaking badass costumes.
And we've been Nick here's been at work. He's been in contact with some other surprisingly big names. So
yeah, a lot of people, a lot of these comic book guys, a lot of the cool things, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this, besides to make money and to meet comic book people, is because these guys are really cool. A lot of these writers, they're not pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They really they're just comic book geeks like you and me who just want to be out there talking about the stuff that they love, the titles that they're passionate about. And whether it's one-on-one in a smoky bar or in front of 1,000 screaming fans. They just want to get a chance to reach some people about the work. So I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised about some of our upcoming guests. So stay tuned. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the group?
No.
Yes, I have something. We will be moving our live stream next week to twitch.tv/Legends Comicast. So if you guys want to head over there now, you can follow us and find out when we go live, but we will be moving there next week.
We will provide all the links and everything on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and X Hamster and all those other all those other websites that were out there. And I started an Instagram earlier today, and I posted one picture, and it got like 20 likes already. So I mean,
Actually, wait, I don't have something for the good of the group, but I actually have a question. I was promised a story about our Twitter account,
yeah.
Oh yeah, what happened there?
but I
Oh
have
yeah.
not yet received. So let's call a timeout. What did you do?
We'll
Sorry.
call this the
Okay. So
Legends Comicast After Hours story at the end.
so
We have to.
It's a long one.
I happen to have created a Twitter account for us earlier today, and the very first thing I did is I wrote a tweet, and I posted it on a couple different authors who I know and have met. I posted it for them, and I asked them to retweet it for us. And I guess I did it so fast and so quickly that Twitter instantly suspended and banned our account. So I created a new one. The first one was called the Legends Cast, and now the new Twitter handle is called Legends Cast. So I fixed that, and I will not be harassing authors anymore in the future on Twitter,
So
so that we
it's
can
a
keep
little
that.
less exciting than my like. I was originally told that this was a story filled with like
Wait,
racism and daring do.
Chris,
Twitter
at,
banned you for being efficient.
Chris, at the end of it, at the end of that, I forgot to mention that I went and killed a guy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Just purely out of
Not as
anger.
bad as racism. That's been proven.
So thank you guys all for tuning in. That's pretty much it for our show. Remember, read comics and support your local comic book store. Thank you.